At number 10, we have the time when Mary Marvel literally uses Green Lantern as a weapon to beat up Troia. In Final Crisis number 3, an evil Mary Marvel is on a rampage, trying to take out both Green Lantern and Troia, a magical mirror duplicate of Wonder Woman. When Mary gets the jump on Green Lantern, we assume that's it for him and that she'll just move on to Troia. But no, for some reason, the enraged former hero takes Green Lantern by the leg and just starts slamming his whole body against Troia, taking her out in the process. I feel badly for Green Lantern here. I mean, he was already unconscious, so like, why did you have to Looney Tunes him like that? Okay. At number 9 is the time when the Wasp falls out of a tree after breaking a branch by accident. Back in the Silver Age, the female heroes were still in desperate need of updates. In this instance, the Wasp, one of the founding members of the Avengers, just flees a fight because back then she wouldn't have helped much, I guess, with the male writers in charge, and goes off to find a male hero to fix the conflict. But on her humble mission, she starts getting chased by a bird while she's in Wasp form. The bird chases her into a tree and forces her to change back into her human form to avoid getting eaten. But what she doesn't account for is that the branch in the tree isn't strong enough to hold her human body weight, so it breaks, and she falls and gets knocked unconscious. Too many dudes in the writer's room. At number 8 is the time when Robin gets trapped in a binding of hurdles and just gives up. Just around the 1964 Olympics, Diablo is attempting to sabotage the games, and the Teen Titans are called to go and prevent this from happening. They seem to be mostly successful until one of Diablo's henchmen throws a bunch of hurdles at Robin like they're hula hoops, and this traps him. So he yells out, "I'm ringed," and kind of just gives in. Even though it looks as though the hurdles are gonna eventually fall to his feet in a pile, allowing him to sort of step out and keep fighting. Kind of weird writing, but definitely embarrassing for the boy wonder who usually seems to keep his composure in sticky situations. At number 7 is the time when the Avengers get sent up in a pressurized elevator by Mole Man. While they're facing off against Mole Man down below Earth in his underground lair, things seem to be going well for the Avengers. I mean, obviously they would be, right? It's all the Avengers versus Mole Man. But what's weird and super embarrassing is that right when they seem like they're getting the upper hand, Mole Man tricks them into entering his pressurized elevator and then just sends them back up to the surface. The weirdest part is that when they get to the top, they don't even question whether or not they should go back down. They just kind of accept it as a win for themselves and move on, even though Mole Man wasn't quite defeated. So this is either a super embarrassing moment for the Avengers, or the writer's mom called him for supper and he had to wrap things up really quickly, suddenly. Either way, it deserves a spot on this list. All right, at number 6 is the time when Spider-Man punches himself in the face while facing off against Spot. Spot is a strange villain who has these portals all over his body which transport anything that enters them to exit out of another one of the holes also on his body. Did I explain that well? Anyway, Spider-Man goes for a punch in the gut on Spot, but his arm naturally enters a hole in his chest and pops out of the hole in Spot's face. This takes the full force of Spidey's punch and sends it flying right back for his own face, getting him right in the nose full force. Spider-Man is known to take humiliation with a grain of salt, given his fun, carefree philosophy, but it's still a funny and pretty embarrassing thing to see one of the more competent heroes facing in such a serious battle. At number 5 is the time when the Green Lantern gets neck chopped by Robin and almost dies. In All-Star Batman and Robin number 9, Green Lantern is lured into a room by Batman and Robin. But what makes this trap really effective against Green Lantern is that it's painted yellow, and the Green Lantern's power ring doesn't work against yellow things, apparently. So, at a huge disadvantage, Green Lantern is stuck, and Robin basically steals the ring right off his finger. Not Batman, Robin does this. A teenager who's basically only been a superhero for a week or so by this point. And it doesn't even end there. Robin then throat chops the Green Lantern so hard that he almost dies, and Batman has to perform a tracheotomy on their defeated foe. It's almost like Robin went a little too hard on this one. Batman's like, okay, whoa, you got him, hold on. Let me save this dude's life with a surgical procedure now. Poor Green Lantern. His life is saved, which is good, but not his dignity, at least not for a while. Okay, at number 4 is a fun one. It's the time when Eminem, yes, Eminem the rapper, beats up the Punisher and then shoots him a bunch of times. In Eminem/Punisher #1, a comic book series I had no idea existed, but I'm so glad it does, Frank Castle is taking on a group of mobsters as usual when famous rapper Marshall Mathers appears out of nowhere and clocks him in the face with a Glock. He then starts firing rounds into the Punisher as he remarks at how easy it was to take down an anti-hero such as the Punisher. This is undoubtedly a hilarious encounter and probably a bit biased in favor of Eminem, because who's gonna write a comic book with Eminem's blessing and then have him be the one who gets his ass handed to him, right? It's sort of a meme moment, I think, but it's still part of the canon, so it happened. The Punisher survives, by the way, but he's gonna feel that one for a while. At number 3 is a very strange one, when Captain America dresses up as an old lady to infiltrate Nazi Germany. In this older issue, Steve and Bucky are trying to enter Nazi Germany undetected, so they decide to get into disguises. Bucky is dressed as a young schoolboy while Cap throws on a corset and a wig and takes on an old woman persona. This plan is so dumb and not really like anything that Captain America ever did before this or has ever done since this. I think this was a time when these stories still had room for goofy, fun moments and heroes weren't being taken quite as seriously as they are today. Because these days, this sort of harebrained scheme wouldn't make it past the draft phase before being thrown out. I'm not sure if this is an embarrassing moment for Captain America or for the writers, but it's embarrassing for sure. Maybe embarrassing for both of them. At number 2 is another Spider-Man fail, but this one is closer to the top of the list because it's just a lot more humiliating than the punch to his own face. In this one, he's hit in the gonads with a slingshot during a live stream. In Superior Spider-Man #6, a version of Spider-Man is chasing down Screwball, a villain that's obsessed with the internet, as well as Jester, Marvel's knockoff Joker. Finally, as Spider-Man is encountering Jester and Screwball, the battle is being live streamed for the world to see. As everyone's waiting in anticipation for Spidey's typical one-liners and quick quips, they get something else instead. After Spider-Man accidentally punches Screwball in the chest, he feels badly, apologizing for the unfortunate accident. But in this already unfortunate situation is right when Jester charges up a slingshot and fires it right at Spidey's downstairs region for the world to see. And then they throw a bunch of paint-filled balloons at his face, which just sort of adds insult to injury. Brutal. Finally, at number 1 is another hit to the groin that's somehow even crazier than this one that I just described. It's when the Punisher shoots off Wolverine's nether region entirely with a shotgun. As the Punisher and Wolverine catch each other on basically the same mission, the Punisher decides that he wants to work alone without distractions. So, being the Punisher that he is, he decides he needs to do some more punishing and takes a shot at the coveted hero's no-no zone. I'm really running out of child-friendly terms here, but we know what I'm trying to say. Anyway, the Punisher then gets into a freaking steamroller and runs Wolverine over. I'm thinking like, where was the fight in you, Logan? He absolutely took you to church on this one. So embarrassing. Tough to watch.
Nearly kills Aquaman in a weird competition in Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen #115. When Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen is eaten by the same whale that ate Jonah in the Bible, he develops the same superpowers as Aquaman. Jimmy uses these newfound powers to save the day when a bunch of sunken ships surface and almost crash into an aircraft carrier. Superman and Aquaman show up, and Supes asks Aquaman why he didn't handle the incident and implies that he's been slipping ever since his wife Mera disappeared. An incensed Aquaman tells Superman that he is far more powerful than Jimmy and can prove it in any test the Man of Steel comes up with. Superman takes both of them to a desert and explains that since their powers only allow them to be out of the water for an hour, and it has been 55 minutes since they were in the sea, they will soon begin to die. Whoever lasts the longest will be King of Atlantis. He leaves them to struggle and returns to taunt them with a pitcher of seawater. When Aquaman loses, Jimmy has him taken back to Atlantis. Once he's gone, Superman reveals that he is actually Proteus, the old man of the sea in disguise. So technically, this wasn't Superman, but Aquaman doesn't learn this until much later in the comic, so for a chunk of time, he thinks that Superman did all that to him. It's not actually Superman, so I put it in the #10 slot, but honestly, this behavior wouldn't be that unusual for the Silver Age Man of Steel. Number 9 makes a smut film with Mr. Miracle's wife in Action Comics number 593. In a really bizarre story by John Byrne, Mr. Miracle comes home to Darkseid sitting in his living room. Darkseid informs him that his wife, Big Barda, has been captured and hands him a VHS tape. Mr. Miracle awkwardly crawls around on the floor to put the tape in his VCR and discovers that his wife has been hypnotized and is starring in adult films. He takes off to find his wife. The villain, Sleaze, shows up at the studio to talk to the director and reveals that he also has Superman under his control and suggests that the director use Superman and Big Barda in a film together. Mr. Miracle arrives just in time to see his wife and Superman making out in a shabby bedroom set, and he interrupts the filming. The three heroes defeat the villains, but all three of the heroes are pretty embarrassed by the situation, and Superman claims that he doesn't remember what happened while under Sleaze's control, but I think he might just be lying to get out of an awkward situation. Anyways, that's the last of these entries on the list where it isn't actually Superman or he isn't in control of his actions, so let's get into the meat of the list. Number 8, his first fight with Batman in Justice League Volume 2, Issue 2. In the story of how the Justice League came together in 2011's New 52 reboot, the heroes are all loners who don't trust each other. When Batman and Green Lantern come across a parademon and a mother box, they are unable to identify it, but realize it is of alien origin. They decide that their best bet is to go to Metropolis and talk to the only other alien they know about, Superman. Due to a misunderstanding, Superman believes that the other two heroes are somehow involved with the parademons and attacks them. Batman tries to hold his own by throwing tear gas, sonic grenades, and tasers at the Man of Steel with no effect. Superman chides the Caped Crusader, telling him, "Your belt's empty, Batman," before grabbing him by the throat and slamming him into a wall. Considering how well Batman managed to do against Superman in subsequent fights, he clearly felt this loss, and I'd argue has never felt so powerless. Number 7, his fight with Green Lantern in Justice League Volume 2, Issue 2. Continuing on from the previous entry, let's talk about how the same fight went for Green Lantern. He spent most of the flight to Metropolis bragging to Batman that he would have no problem beating the Man of Steel. When they found Superman, Hal told Batman to stay back while he handled Superman. Superman then came at him faster than a speeding bullet and more powerfully than a locomotive. While Batman was being mildly irritating at best to Superman, Green Lantern came in for round 2, tying Superman up with constructs of giant chains. Superman smirked and said, "Chains? Really? You're funny, Green Lantern," before easily shattering the construct and renewing his attack. Pretty much all of Hal's confidence shattered at this point, and he protected Batman and himself in a bubble as Superman bounced them around the city. Superman was being pretty intense about the whole situation, but thankfully a timely intervention by the Flash allowed them to recover and explain themselves to the Man of Steel. Number 6, exiles Supergirl to another planet in Action Comics number 258. When Superman's cousin Kara Zor-El came to Earth and revealed that he wasn't the only surviving member of his family, Superman described it as the happiest moment of his life. He then dropped her off at the orphanage and told her that she had to keep her existence a secret. She took all of this in stride and followed Superman's orders until one day she saw Krypto the Superdog flying around. She introduced herself to Krypto and the two had a fun time playing together. Then Superman showed up and started scolding her for revealing her existence. Supergirl very reasonably points out that Krypto is a dog and can't talk, let alone reveal her to the world. Superman responds by banishing her to live on an asteroid for a year in complete isolation. Supergirl stays there for a week before Krypto shows up with a note from Superman telling her that there is a storm of kryptonite dust coming to the asteroid and that she must return to the orphanage in her secret identity of Linda Lee for one day before going back to space for the rest of her exile. Linda shows up at the orphanage but finds herself in a spot of trouble when she comes across a search party that has been looking for the missing orphan. She covers herself in mud and claims to have been stranded in Dismal Swamp for the past week. She dodges reporters' questions and Superman reveals that all the shaming and sending her off into exile was an elaborate test to see if she was clever enough to figure out how to maintain a secret identity. Superman congratulates Supergirl for passing the test and she excitedly asks if this means that she no longer has to keep her existence a secret, and Superman clarifies that he never said that and tells her to continue living in secret until he damn well says so. Number 5 replaces Krypto with a different super dog in Superboy number 109. Due to his many years in comics and his recent appearance in DC League of Super Pets, you are likely passingly familiar with Krypto the Superdog, but are you familiar with his rival, Swifty the Greyhound? Our story begins when Superboy is fiddling with his Phantom Zone projector while the imprisoned Kryptonian criminals led by General Zod are trying to affect the Boy of Steel by using mental suggestion to convince him to destroy himself. Because of his powers, Superboy isn't affected, so the Phantoms try again with Krypto to no avail. They instead brainwash a dog named Swifty and control him into making a potion that gives him superpowers. When Swifty shows up with powers, Superboy decides to put the two dogs through a series of tests to determine who is the better super pet and will get to go with him on an important space mission. The Phantom Kryptonians help Swifty so that he wins the competition. At this point, Superboy takes away Krypto's cape and gives it to the rival dog. To add insult to injury, he makes Krypto put on a damaged, moth-eaten cape and then ditches his dog to go to space with Swifty. Even Krypto thinks this is a bit much, as on the teaser page for the story, we see him thinking to himself between sobs, "Bad enough my master prefers that supermutt to me, but did Superboy have to give Swifty my snazzy, indestructible cape and make me wear this crummy, moth-eaten spare cape of his?" Swifty eventually betrays the Boy of Steel, who is saved by a timely intervention by Krypto, but that doesn't make his treatment of his dog any less weird and kinda petty. Number 4. One-upping Batman's gifts in World's Finest number 85. When the ruler of Balkania, Princess Verena, comes to America, her only desire is to see the famous heroes Superman and Batman. And if Robin is also there, that's fine. When the two heroes meet the princess, both are immediately smitten and begin competing for the beautiful princess's affection. When Batman goes out and gets her a bouquet of orchids, Superman flies to South America and gets a giant orchid for the princess. Batman gives her a large diamond ring that he bought, and Superman responds by getting a giant piece of coal and crushing it into a giant, supersized diamond and offering it to the princess. Batman takes Verena on a tour of the city in the Batmobile, letting a very unimpressed Robin drive while he puts the Bat moves on the princess. The mood is ruined when they look at a nearby cliff that Superman has defaced by carving a giant heart with the words "S loves V." Batman goes to the train station with the princess so she can move on from Metropolis to Gotham, but before he can get on the train, Superman picks up the train and flies it to Gotham, leaving Batman to frantically chase after them in the Batplane. When they discover that the princess is actually in love with her bodyguard, Captain Stefan, the heroes claim that they were just pretending to be rivals in order to better protect her, but come on. Even if that is the case, that doesn't mean Superman had to go so all out on making Batman look like a fool in front of the princess and the entire world. Number 3. Making Robin his court jester in World's Finest number 165. When the evil King Wolf escapes from prison, he claims to his men that he is dying. He devises a competition for his henchmen to determine who the new king of crime will be. They must complete 3 robberies, and whoever pulls off the robbery best will be the new king. Batman and Superman suspect that the king is lying about his condition and decide to help the criminals with their robberies in hopes that the king will reveal his true plan. Batman and Robin take out one of the henchmen, and Batman disguises himself as the goon in order to infiltrate the gang. One of the other criminals disguises himself as Superman in order to pretend to stop a robbery and take the loot as evidence. In order to make sure he wins the competition, Batman knows he has to pull off a spectacular crime, and well in disguise as the goon, disguises himself as Batman and holds himself hostage, threatening to have himself killed if the submarine he's robbing doesn't hand over the ship's supercomputer. Robin pretends to not know what's going on, and Batman pretends to capture him and takes him back to the king's hideout. Okay, if you're confused, don't worry, it gets worse. Batman ties with the criminal who is disguised as Superman, who unbeknownst to Batman actually is Superman, and both are crowned the new kings of crime. When asked what his first royal decree is, Superman immediately says he wants to see Robin killed. Like, honestly, it comes to mind a little too fast. Batman is able to claim that since he captured Robin, he should get to decide his fate, and suggests that they make him the new court jester. Superman agrees, and Robin is forced to dress as a jester and perform for the court of criminals, while Batman and Superman tool around. Now, Dick Grayson was a circus performer before becoming a hero, but it's still weird that Superman and Batman made him dress up and give them a full show before making any effort to figure out the criminal's plan. Number 2 frames Batman for witchcraft in World's Finest number 186 and 187. When Batman and Superman go back in time to colonial times, they come across a woman who had been accused of witchcraft and is about to be dunked in the town pond. Superman moves too fast to be seen and goes into the water and uses his steel-like teeth to gnaw through the dunking mechanism. Batman then dives into the water and rescues the woman. She is smitten with Batman and gives him a kiss. Superman thinks to himself, "Isn't that just like a woman? I did the work and Batman's collecting bring the goodies. In retaliation, the Man of Steel disguises himself as Batman and starts flying around the town on a broomstick. He then uses his super speed to make it look like Batman has turned coal to diamonds, and uses his super ventriloquism to make it look like a black cat is accusing Batman of being an agent of Satan. As an impartial out-of-towner, Superman is chosen to prosecute a very confused Batman. He has Batman put in the stocks and sentences him to be burnt at the stake. When Batman is tied to the stake, Superman uses his heat vision to start the fire, claiming that it is further proof of Batman's demonic powers. Batman is eventually able to make the townsfolk think that Superman is the witch and is set free. Superman tells Batman that he saw that he had been possessed by a demon and was putting Batman in danger to scare the demon out of his body. But as the reader, we can read Superman's thought bubbles during the frame job, and he really does think about how jealous he is that the woman has chosen Batman over him, and is laughing and giggling to himself as Batman begs him to stop the townsfolk from carrying him away in chains. So even if he had a good reason to put Batman in danger, he's getting way too much joy out of it. Number 1 forces Jimmy Olsen to marry a gorilla in Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen number 98. For anyone claiming Jimmy Olsen doesn't count as a hero, I would remind you that Jimmy has saved Superman's life several times and has developed superpowers even more times, so I'm counting him. In Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen number 98, Jimmy and Clark are on assignment in the African jungle where a blockbuster movie is being filmed. The film crew is using the local natives as extras, and in exchange are showing the natives a different jungle movie every night. The natives worship a sacred ape named Bruna, who comes into the camp and is enamored with the showing of King Kong. When Jimmy dresses up in a Tarzan costume and begins swinging from vines in an attempt to convince the director to give him a role in the movie, he gets trapped by an underwater pool of quicksand. He is rescued by Bruna, the sacred ape, who is immediately smitten with the young cub reporter. The ape tries to woo Jimmy, even bringing him a bouquet of bananas, but Jimmy runs away. The sacred ape goes on a rampage after losing her chosen mate, and Superman decides that the best thing for everyone would be if Jimmy just goes along with it until he can figure out a plan. He drops Jimmy off with the ape and brings them a fruit basket as an engagement gift. Jimmy's girlfriend, Lucy Lane, shows up and makes the ape a bridal veil. Just when things can't seem to get any worse for Jimmy, Superman shows up dressed as a witch doctor to perform the ceremony while the movie crew films the whole thing. Bruna eventually tires of Jimmy and throws him off a cliff, and he is rescued by the Man of Steel, but I think we can all agree that Superman let this one go on a little too far before he intervened.
Number 10. Peter Parker. Hey, we didn't say which Spider-Man was doing the embarrassing here. Peter Parker and Miles Morales met for the first time when Peter was teleported to Miles' universe. Now, I don't know why Peter's first decision was to attack Mr. Morales. He's had clones of himself before, and he's also been to other alternate universes, but hey, that's what he did. And it was 110% a mistake. As fans of Miles know, he is extremely capable. And he also has a unique Spider-Man power set. He used his Venom sting to paralyze Peter while jumping over him. He then went invisible and got Peter with a sneak attack kick to the face. It doesn't stop there though. After Peter demasked Miles, he got a nice electric shock that knocked him out cold. For an 11-year-old kid, Miles gave the experienced Peter Parker quite the beating. Number 9. Winter Soldier and Falcon. For a young lad, Peter Parker seems to overpower a lot of people. In his introduction to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Peter just shows us and two of Captain America's best pals that he ain't someone to mess with. During their fight, he overpowered the super soldier, even using his metal arms against him, disables and webs up Falcon, and redirects a huge chunk of metal flung at him by the Winter Soldier, all while quipping in the best ways possible. It was honestly so awesome to see when it first happened. He leaves them laying on the ground exhausted and webbed up. Not only an embarrassment for the two veteran soldiers and heroes, but a really fitting and hilarious introduction for the character to the MCU. Number 8. Luke Cage. A lot of the time, when a new hero is introduced into a comic book world, a fight between the misunderstood hero and another has to take place. That is exactly what happened when Luke Cage came on the scene. Luke Cage, the hero for hire, showed up in the Amazing Spider-Man number 123, hired by J. Jonah Jameson to capture Spider-Man for the death of Norman Osborn. Luke Cage ain't a guy you should underestimate by any means. Super strength and stamina, bulletproof skin, and a healing factor. But it's Spider-Man. Luke tackles Spider-Man off a roof and gets a few punches in. But Spider-Man kicked him off of another roof, teased him about basically being a mercenary, slammed him through a brick wall, got several fists to the face in, used Luke's own weight against him, and punched him through a skylight. They come to blows later on in the comic with pretty much the same outcome, causing Luke Cage to quit this one particular job. Go Web! Fly! Up, up, and away, Web! Shazam! Go, Web, go! 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 Go, Web, go! Oh wait, that's not my power. No, my power is to make YouTube videos for you guys. Do you know what gives me this power? You liking and subscribing to the channel. And you are doing an absolutely stunning job. Keep it up. And don't forget to check out our Facebook for more content. Number 7, the Hulk. In terms of raw power, Spider-Man stands absolutely no chance against the Hulk. I think his spider sense may give him some kind of advantage, but there is no way he is lasting long in that fight. Unless he gets a power boost in the form of, I don't know, the power cosmic. Oh, that's exactly what happened in the Amazing Spider-Man issue number 328. The Grey Hulk, who yes is a bit weaker and logical compared to his Savage counterpart, is hired by Sebastian Shaw to target Spider-Man. Money is always a good motivator. Unfortunately for Hulk, Spider-Man has been going to the cosmic gym and hitting the cosmic weights. He lands some pretty heavy blows on the Grey Goliath and even blinds him with a new I-beam power. When some kids are put in danger though, Spider-Man ends the conflict quick by punching the Hulk into orbit and then saving him before he suffocates, standing all confident with his hands on his hips and like that. Number 6, the Fantastic Four. In the very first issue of his self-titled magazine, Spider-Man is putting other heroes to shame. Spider-Man infiltrates the Baxter building, where he is encased in a plexiglass cage that he very easily opens the door to. He takes a single punch from the thing before he throws him into Johnny Storm. When Reed tries to catch Peter, he totally just dodges it and webs up Mr. Fantastic's hands. He uses his spider sense to detect Sue Storm while she's invisible and spins her around really fast with her lasso. But then, Johnny Storm gets him in a circle of flame. He says, and I quote, "Well, I'll just jump over that clown's little trap." It's honestly a pretty impressive display, and it happened in no less than 1.5 pages. The fight ends when Spider-Man lets him know that he's here to join up, and with that little fight was just a display of what he can do. Yeah, that little display would probably do better than a resume. Number 5, Iron Man. In the Civil War storyline, we know that Spider-Man initially is on the side of Tony Stark's Iron Man, but after he sees the lengths that Tony is willing to go to, he has a bit of a change of heart. Obviously, this leads to a scuffle between the two. At this time, Tony had given Peter the Iron Spider suit. What he didn't tell Peter is that he built in an emergency override that would shut down the suit and essentially shut down Peter with the simple phrase Omega Omega Epsilon 9. It's only a bit of a jerk move. You took Peter under your wing, but you're going to plant a failsafe against him? It kinda makes it look like you know you're guilty. But then again, he is a genius, he is a member of the Illuminati, and he is not the kind of guy to take risks. But how is this embarrassing for Tony? Well, I'm glad you asked, my little nerds. Peter is no idiot, and behind Stark's back, he hacked into the suit and built in his own override to override the override that Tony put there. Passcode, surprise. And the suit is back up and running and covers Tony's helmet in a thick layer of web, allowing Peter to get in a good punch and escape. Number 4. Wolverine. This one's a pretty quick one. I bet some of you thought I was going to pull from the Wolverine vs. Spider-Man comic. I'll do you one better. It should be obvious, but you don't dare insult Mary Jane Watson to Peter's face. In Amazing Spider-Man issue 522, Peter is awoken with a call about a newspaper article claiming Mary Jane has a little entanglement with Tony Stark. It's obviously not true and actually a setup by a villain. But that's not the point right now. Peter got out of his bed in Stark Tower and goes looking for his wife. Along the way, he runs into Wolverine in a room with a very lovely high-up view of the city. Now, Logan decides to start going on about how Mary Jane messed up big time, and after a warning from Peter, he decides to comment on her lack of brains. This lovely little comment gets him thrown through an unbreakable glass window, and it gives him a really colorful way to catch a cab. Number 3. Daredevil. When Spider-Man was in possession of the symbiote suit, he wasn't his normal self. He was much more ruthless. And Spider-Man can already knock criminals into a coma when he is pulling his punches. When Spider-Man interrupts Sin Eater Stanley Carter from attacking Betty Brant and almost killing her, he starts to lay into the guy, beating Stanley while giving him an earful. Peter goes so far that Daredevil notices his heartbeat pounding and pulls him off of the beaten villain. He defends the criminal from Peter, who is seemingly gonna kill him. If you want him, you'll have to come through me. Probably not the best choice of words there, Daredevil. The very next panel shows Daredevil flying through a window. If it wasn't such a serious moment, I would laugh. Nah, I did laugh. Is that wrong? I can't help it, I'm sorry. Number 2. The X-Men. It seems that Spider-Man really shows his skill when he comes into contact with teams of heroes. First the Fantastic Four, and in the 4th issue of Secret Wars, the X-Men. As if dealing with multiple superpowered beings was his speciality or something. I think the best part about these altercations is the way he just keeps talking while he's embarrassing them. After Xavier senses Spider-Man listening in on their conversation, Spider-Man attacks the X-Men a little prematurely, I'll admit. He dodges Wolverine, webs Colossus' face, dangles Rogue from a rod, webs up Nightcrawler faster than he can say BAMF, and swats Wolverine away with a single swing and escapes. It's just so crazy to me how he knows that he easily outclasses almost every one of the X-Men. Or if not, he knows exactly how to subdue them. Number 1. Superboy. If we're doing a video about characters embarrassing other heroes, there's almost always going to be one point that has to do with the DC and Marvel crossover event. Just like the first point, this isn't actually Peter Parker though, but it's a clone of him, so that's basically the same thing. When the DC Marvel crossover happened, Ben Reilly had taken up the Spider-Man mantle. And it was him that fought Superboy on a rooftop. To get things going, Spider-Man hits the Superboy with a webbing right to his very stylish sunglasses. Superboy, just trying to get a hit on our spider friend, busts a hole into a water tower, drenching the entire battlefield. Spider-Man wouldn't stand too long in a one-on-one slugging match with this guy, but that's not his specialty anyways. Just as Superboy is about to land a flying blow into Spidey, he jumps out of the way, firing webbing all over the guy, and leaving the soaking wet Superboy to fly straight into an electrical box, taking him right out of the fight.
Number 10. Deadpool has a breakthrough. A breakthrough. Get it? You will. There have been a few times that Wolverine has shamed and embarrassed Deadpool, especially in combat. One such time, Deadpool was actually the one looking for a fight, and so Wolverine decided to oblige him. But he didn't just do that, he also gave him some pretty witty retorts as well. You see, Deadpool was made to believe that fighting Wolverine would help resolve some issues he has with his own past. And while Wolverine not only schooled him in combat, but also wisdom, at one point Deadpool asks Logan to dig deeper. Not knowing at the time what Wade is talking about at all, Wolverine responds with that deep enough murk as he stabs him through with his claws. Wolverine has always had some of the best mid-combat speeches and retorts. He also might have the mutant power of being able to leap and give you a whole speech during that one leap. Number 9. Namor gets beat in his own domain. Surprisingly, Wolverine has seemingly held his own against Namor more than once in the comics. One such time was when the two duked it out in Civil War. Their fight goes down in Wolverine's tie-in issues, mainly being featured in issue 45. Here, not only does Wolverine prove himself on land, but also in the sea, breaking into Atlantis and Namor's palace, and even managing to hold his own in combat against Namor's guards, fighting underwater. And Wolverine isn't usually the best at fighting underwater. He has an underwater suit of Iron Man's to aid him, but it doesn't seem to operate very smoothly for him. Despite this, he gets a few good hits in at Namor, punching him back for a joke that he made when he thought Wolverine was Iron Man about keeping Wolverine on a tighter leash. Yikes. In the end, Wolverine also proves himself to Namor, and despite their disagreement over who should get custody of the criminal Nitro, Namor meets him later at a bar to give Wolverine the information that he was looking for, which I think is pretty nice. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to hear about more embarrassing moments that Wolverine has doled out, be sure to head on over to Facebook and click that like, because we are going to be putting up more content over there, and there'll be lots of good stuff for you in regards to Wolverine and other heroes. Number 8. Emma Frost's dirty secrets revealed. Dirty, dirty secrets. Actually, it's not that dirty. It's not that dirty of a secret in my mind, but you know. In this moment, it appeared to be, I guess, kind of dirty. During the first Civil War, Wolverine sets out on his own mission to capture Nitro, the one behind the start of the Civil War. Basically, the catalyst, if you will. He does this against the wishes of Cyclops and Emma Frost. When Emma and Cyke confront him about it in the 2003 Wolverine series in issue 46, the issue following the one with Namor, Emma threatens to basically mind wipe him back to a 3-year-old mental capacity. Wolverine responds by putting Emma in her place by 1, reminding her that the size shields Professor X gave him protects him against her powers, and 2, by revealing that he knows she and Tony Stark, aka Iron Man, used to, team up. Well, Emma seems pretty shocked that Wolverine knows about this and is pretty embarrassed that he outed this previous relationship of hers to Scott. Her reaction is also interesting, as it's also during Civil War I, I believe, that she discloses that Scott does know of their relationship, of her relationship with Tony in the past, in a different comic. Although, maybe this happened after that, but I do believe the issue where Emma brings it up is Civil War issue number 3, and I think that was released before this issue. But maybe the continuity in canon is different than the release order, or I just found a continuity error, and that's what that is. Number 7, is Hulk really the strongest there is? Yes, he still is, I think. He is the strongest there is. But he's not always the smartest, as is proven here in this fight against Wolverine from Incredible Hulk issue 340. Now, it should be noted that in this fight, Wolverine is actually taking on the Grey Hulk, which isn't known for being one of the strongest personas or versions of the Hulk. But still, the impressive part here isn't so much even Wolverine's skill and strength as a fighter, although you're likely to be impressed by that somewhat still if you're so inclined, but the smarts and character development we see Wolverine display here. Wolverine accidentally picks a fight with Hulk by insulting him, unintentionally. Hulk responds by attempting to attack Wolverine, who manages to get the first slash and kind of dodge in successfully, but then decides to take the higher road and actually chooses to apologize to the Hulk, not wanting to fight him and attempting to fight against his own internal animalistic desire and instincts to do so. When Hulk refuses to let him go and says, "I've gotten smarter and you've gotten gutless," Wolverine replied with, "Knowing when to fight and when to walk away is more smarts than you'll ever have." Yeah, I like that. Such a good Wolverine line to Hulk. Like, I'm just like, whoo! Ouch, you're gonna need some ice for that burn, Hulk. Number 6, Cable and Bishop both get bested. I can't even believe that this happened. Cable is considered an Omega level mutant, and yet Wolverine was still able to take him down. And for reference, Wolverine is considered Beta level when it comes to his abilities and his control over them, more specifically. At least, I think he's still considered Beta level. He's definitely not Omega level, I'll tell you that much. Granted, Wolverine did have some help here from Bishop, and does at least choose to spare Cable during their fight as part of the Executioner song story. You see, he thinks that Cable is actually the one they're looking for, but really it's his evil twin Strife. Wolverine isn't quite ready to kill him dead though, not knowing about Strife, but he does have a small amount of doubt that stays in his head. So he's like, I'm just gonna hold off, because even though I think it's you, we don't know for sure. You're making me doubt it. Then when Bishop attempts to finish the job, because he's like, no way, we just hunted this guy down, we fought him, that's it, Wolverine in turn shows up Bishop by slicing his gun to pieces so that he can't actually kill Cable with it, telling him to cool off before getting another gun off the rack and getting back to sorting out this whole mess with Cable's currently very suspicious appearance and self. Even though, like we said, it's Strife, but we didn't know that yet. Or well, Wolverine didn't know that yet, at least. Number 5, Jean Grey gets more help than she bargained for. Jean gets more help than she asked for from Wolverine in this issue of X-Men. In fact, she didn't even really ask for his help to begin with, but she did complain about her ability to move freely in her outfit and her struggle to kind of like tear it so that she could move a little bit more freely. Which obviously was a classic mistake, because Logan is always more than happy to help Jeannie gain more mobility by maybe, parting with pieces of her garment. Hey, he's just trying to help her out. This all goes down in the very first X-Men Christmas special that we ever got. In this story, the X-Men are kidnapped, and it's during their daring escape that Jean complains of her inability to move freely. She's trying to tear her dress. So Wolverine, being the gentleman he is, sees her struggling and decides to help her tear away the bottom half of her gown, freeing up her movement, but at the expense of both irritating and seemingly confusing Jean, who actually responds with, "Hey, not so blasted short. Thank you very much. I think." I just love that whole response. She's like, I'm mad, but what even happened? Number 4, Cyclops is shamed. When Emma and Scott started seeing one another, Wolverine was pretty quick to embarrass them and shame them in front of the rest of the team. Mainly, he focused his ire on Scott, who he saw as betraying Jean's memory. And he wasn't alone either. By the way, at this point, Jean had recently died, and Scott and Emma were together, but yeah, people all felt pretty weird about it. A lot of the other X-Men felt similarly, and they began to actually treat Scott differently because of his and Emma's relationship. This was because the two had started seeing one another psychically while Scott was still with Jean, but he and Marvel Girl, as she was formerly known, were having marital problems at the time. He had a psychic affair with Emma, and then after Jean died, immediately started just being in this very public relationship with her. Wolverine even went so far as to fight Scott physically over this blossoming relationship with Emma. Don't worry though, Jean's ghost would arrive to give Scott the green light so we could all feel better about the whole thing. Jean's ghost always coming back to be like, look, everyone just be cool. I'm Jean's ghost, I am like a god. Number 3, Shatterstar gets shattered. That's right, Wolverine pretty much completely embarrassed and obliterated Shatterstar in the Executioner's Song story. While Shatterstar did seem to miraculously survive here, Wolverine gave him a fistful of claws, not only embarrassing Shatterstar, but also leaving Richter pretty distraught amidst the loss of his most dearest friend. Even back in the 90s, the feelings were pretty strong between Richter and Shatterstar, as is evident here, and in many of the comics. This all went down in an epic fight between various X-teams, including a split-up X-Men roster into 2 separate teams, Blue and Gold, and X-Factor besides. Wolverine is quick to jump into action, and Shatterstar doesn't even get to show off his own impressive fighting skills much before Wolverine turns him into a shish kebab. For someone who is known for being a proud warrior, this whole display, I imagine, would be pretty disappointing for Shatterstar. While he didn't physically die from his injury here, he may have died of embarrassment. Number 2, Spider-Man gets hit where it hurts. In the heart. You can tell that this was a moment that really was upsetting to Peter Parker's Spider-Man because of how he reacts to it. At one point when both Wolverine and Spider-Man are staying in Avengers Tower, Pete and MJ, who is also there with Peter, have a kind of a relationship scandal. A news story is basically being spread around that MJ, who is still married to Peter at the time, is having an affair with Tony Stark. While Peter is distraught about this, Wolverine takes the opportunity to make a joke at MJ's expense and at the expense of her and Peter's relationship. He says, and I quote, "Sweet Cheeks messed up big time. It's not your fault she screwed up. I mean, if she had brains to go with all that beauty, she wouldn't be with you in the first place, right?" Ouch! Peter of course reacts by pushing Wolverine so hard that he goes flying through and out of a ceiling to floor window in the high-rise that was supposed to be made of unbreakable glass. So you can tell that one probably cut real deep for Peter. Whew. Number 1, the X-Force are defeated. The defeat of Shatterstar was just the beginning for the X-Force, unfortunately, in Executioner's Song. Shortly thereafter, they would also be tracked down by Wolverine and taken out primarily by him and Psylocke, forced to surrender to the Blue X-Men and X-Factor teams. And they were backed into a corner fairly easily, I gotta say, with Wolverine choosing to hunt them down and citing it as one of the things he is best known for, which obviously here he proves he is best known for it. He's pretty good at hunting people down. Although I imagine X-Force, like the other teams, also felt pretty conflicted about this whole fight against their friends, so this combined with Wolverine's ruthlessness probably helped to convince them in surrendering. Still, pretty embarrassing that basically Wolverine and Psylocke show up and they're like, hey, we're just gonna do this, and then everyone comes in at the end to be like, yeah, we're here too.
And at number 10, Green Lantern and Troia. This one comes from Countdown to Final Crisis issue 3 and features an evil Mary Marvel, who Green Lantern and Troia attempt to take out. Those are 2 foes who don't really go down all that easy, if we're being honest. Well, maybe Green Lantern, but more on that later. Mary manages to get the upper hand on them. After knocking out Green Lantern, she grabs hold of his ankle and then uses him as a weapon to club the crap out of Troia, beating her unconscious, which apparently makes the sound effect whap 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 whap, in case you ever just want to know what Hal Jordan's body colliding with another body sounded like. For you curious Hal Jordan fans out there. And at number 9, Bruiser and Wolverine. So Wolverine is by no means a superhero that goes down without a fight, or easily. But for this member of the Runaways, knocking Logan down was no big deal. This happened in Runaways Volume 2, Issue 12. Now for context, Bruiser, aka Molly Hayes, aka Princess Powerful, is the youngest member of the Runaways. She's the sole mutant on the team, and her powers, despite her parents being telepathic mutants, are that of superhuman strength and invulnerability. She knocks Wolverine out in one punch with him going flying and landing into a snowbank, muttering to himself, "Only 198 mutants left on the stinking planet, and that girl's gotta be one of them." And at number 8, Punisher vs. Bruiser. Yeah, another Bruiser one! If you thought Wolverine's defeat via Bruiser Molly Hayes was bad, Punisher's is like 10 times worse. In Runaways issue 26, when the team are posing as a crime syndicate as part of a plan to take down Wilson Fisk, aka Kingpin, they cross paths with the Punisher. And guess what? Poor Frank Castle has no clue what they're really doing. He thinks he's going after the crime syndicate. Frank holds a gun to chase Stein's head, another member of the Runaways, only to be met by Molly's fist colliding with his gut. Castle goes down immediately. And you know it's more than just his body that ached. His ego was clearly bruised as well. Oh. And at number 7, Superboy. It should be no surprise that we've included a crippling, embarrassing defeat from the Silver Age on this list. Many a story, especially as far as DC is concerned, were quite wacky back in that era, including this one, The Surrender of Superboy from Superboy issue 110. In front of a massive crowd of people, Superboy and Krypto are challenged to a game of tug-of-war by a scrawny old man. But the catch is, this old man ain't a regular pensioner. He's Merlin the Wizard in disguise. Merlin uses magic to win the match, which humiliates Superboy and Krypto in front of a massive crowd gathered in Smallville. Merlin reveals the truth at the end after being victorious, but hey, that's still pretty embarrassing. I mean, Krypto can walk away from that, he is an adorable dog. Superboy? Not so much. And at number 6, Batman vs. Wonder Woman. Batman is generally the one embarrassing other heroes from time to time, but in this case it's Wonder Woman who hands him his butt on a platter. In the 2002 graphic novel Wonder Woman the Hecate, our hero takes part in an ancient ritual called the Hecate, in which she's honor bound to protect a young woman who comes a-knockin' on her doorstep named Danielle. Turns out Batman has been hot on Danielle's heels after she committed a crime. Batman, searching for the fugitive, tracks Danielle all the way to Wonder Woman, in which Diana tells Bats that she can't let him have her, and proceeds to wail on him, knocking him down onto the street in front of astonished civilian eyes. Later, Batman tries to get the girl again, but this time Diana really lets him have it, ending their conflict with her stomping her boot on top of his head until he finally gives in and tells Wonder Woman that she wins. To be fair, Danielle committed a crime because she was in a very precarious situation, which Wonder Woman totally gets, and Batman's like, no mercy, not gonna do it, and then Wonder Woman's just like, bam, bitch. Up next, number 5, Dollar Bill. Compared to most of the other superheroes on this list, Dollar Bill from Watchmen doesn't actually have superpowers. Rather, he's a superhero who is sponsored by a bank, so he doesn't even have Batman's genius intellect or all of the other things that Batman's. Now, despite the original Night Owl calling him a straight shooter and a stand-up guy, he's also a major misogynist and super homophobic, which makes it a little easier to feel less bad for him. Dollar Bill's embarrassing defeat also resulted in his death. This happened when his cape got stuck in a revolving door and he was shot point blank in the face by a criminal, who was like, hey, he's trapped, I'm just gonna... definitely not the most heroic way to go. And at number 4, Doctor Strange gets choked. The Ultimatum story arc in the Marvel Ultimates universe is filled with a lot of controversial and brutal superhero deaths, but perhaps one of the worst is Doctor Strange's while fighting his mystic nemesis Dormammu. During battle, Dormammu takes Strange's cape and strangles him with it, something you'd think the Sorcerer Supreme would be able to get out of, or at least avoid, considering he is the Sorcerer Supreme. But nope, he's strangled to death in one of the most graphic and embarrassing panels in the storyline. Look at his face, it's so purple. Ugh. And at 3, Changeling. If you thought being strangled by your own cape in battle is bad, then this one is definitely going to make you cringe. Changeling, aka Beast Boy, was defeated in a much different manner. Off of the battlefield, actually. But it was a direct attack to his narcissistic nature. During the famous Judas Contract story arc, Deathstroke and Terra, the latter whom Beast Boy had romantic feelings for, decide to take Gar out in a more creative manner. Deathstroke sends Changeling a bunch of letters from fans, requesting autographs from the young superhero. Gar starts signing them all and licks a bunch of envelopes to send the signed photos to his adoring fanbase. Except those envelopes, well, the glue on them was drugged, meaning he's been licking poison paper, and of course he gets knocked out because of it. Definitely not a story he would want to tell his fellow teammates. Vanity hurts, friends. And at number 2, Batman vs. Guy Gardner. Batman has always had beef with Green Lanterns. While his particular grudge over Hal Jordan had to do with the Green Lantern being possessed by Parallax and causing all sorts of trouble, when it comes to another particular Lantern, Guy Gardner, well, Bruce just doesn't really like him all that much, which is totally easy to understand because Guy is a very unlikable guy, and Guy really gets on the Caped Crusader's nerves in Justice League issue 5. So Batman knocks out Guy with one punch in front of all of their fellow Justice League International peers. It's embarrassing as hell for him. In Batman's defense though, for 4 issues prior to that one, Guy was incredibly obnoxious, and had a real issue with Batman calling the shots as a leader of sorts. Batman finally breaks, punching Guy out, breaking his nose, and leaving him unconscious on the ground while everyone else looks on in awe. Awe and Wonder. This shuts Guy up for like a few issues, putting him in his place. But you can never really shut up Guy Gardner, can ya? And finally, in at number 1, Hal Jordan and the Yellow Room. By now, you know that Green Lanterns have a history of getting their butts kicked in not so pleasant ways. So naturally, we're ending off this list with yet another Green Lantern humiliating defeat. This one is from Frank Miller's All-Star Batman and Robin. You know, the comic where Batman is a complete dick and verbally abuses Robin a whole lot. But it's not just Robin who gets the short end of the stick from Bruce. It's also his favorite buddy Hal Jordan. Aside from sassing the hell out of him, at one point Batman literally paints an entire room yellow in spite of Hal, then proceeds to torment him, all while the Boy Wonder, who's basically been on the job as a superhero for like a day at this point, surprises Hal, steals his Green Lantern ring, and then proceeds to beat him up. So not only is he triggered by the color yellow, which like is a thing that triggers Hal Jordan, it's like, dude, what is it like getting your ass handed to you by a preteen?
Coming in at number 10, we have Don't Mess with Batman. It will always be somewhat of a mystery as to how Guy Gardner is able to hold on to his lantern ring. The dude is kind of rude and childish, but I will admit he has pulled off some pretty impressive things as a lantern. He's just not what you would expect from a member of the most renowned space cops, and there have been plenty of times when Guy has crossed the line, like when he was forced to work under Batman with the Justice League International. Guy didn't think this made any sense. Why was a dude in a bat suit telling him what to do? Why was Guy Gardner not the one who was running the team? So Guy kept going on about how he should have been at the helm. He was whining, complaining, and insulting Batman. So Batman wanted to get everyone in order the fastest way possible and one-punched Guy Gardner. He literally knocked the dude out, a Green Lantern in one shot. So if Guy had any questions about who should be in charge, they would have all been answered as soon as he woke up and put his nose back in place. This was hero on hero, but for Guy this was still pretty damn embarrassing to get floored from one shot. Coming in at number 9, we have the Lantern Club. I mean, if I was a villain with super strength, I would have done the same move. It's really killing two birds with one stone, or two supers with one super. If you flip open the comic Countdown to Crisis issue 3, you will see two heroes squaring off against one villain. In the hero's corner, you have Troya and Hal Jordan, a powerful team up that would normally come out victorious. And in the villain's corner, we have Mary Marvel, a villain that sounds like she should be in a straight-to-DVD Christmas special, but in this encounter, she showed that she's no slouch. When she takes on the two do-gooders, she quickly knocks down Troya and then snags Hal by his ankle, and then proceeds to beat Troya with Hal using the lantern like a club. And just like that, you have both of them bloodied and beaten. Really, that was the most effective way to get the job done. Coming in at number 8, we have Spider-Man versus the Spot. The Spot will go down as one of the worst Spider-Man villains ever, but that doesn't mean that he wasn't able to get one over on Spidey. For those of you who don't know, the Spot is a villain that is covered with small portals all over his body. Think of him as the game portal, where you go in one portal and you come out the other, even if it defies the laws of physics. In their encounter, Spider-Man tries to punch the Spot and ends up clocking himself in the face. It was like a grade school bully going, "Stop hitting yourself. Stop hitting yourself." Coming in at number 7, we have Pants Punched and KO'd. Not all supers come from Marvel and DC, so when I get a chance, I like to sneak in some moments from outside the superhero norms. For this one, we're gonna head into the world of anime to one of my favorite shows, My Hero Academia. In season 1, we have the Sports Festival, where new promising heroes go up against each other for the entertainment of the people. In this tournament, we see Aoyama, who has a belly laser power similar to Cyclops, but it comes out of his stomach. He goes up against Ashido, who has acid powers. The two square off in a short scrap that ends with Ashido blasting Aoyama's belt line with acid. This causes his pants to fall down, and Ashido slides in and uppercuts him unconscious. So getting knocked out while you're scrambling to pull up your pants, yeah, that's one of the worst ways to go out. Coming in at number 6, we have Packing on the Pounds. You only have to look at comic books for about 4 seconds to get enough unrealistic body standards to give an entire generation of people body dysmorphia. So when one hero puts on enough pounds that he couldn't even use his powers, that really sticks out, especially when your power is how fast you can move. I mean, if this was to happen to the Blob, I don't think anyone would notice. Being big is kind of his thing. Who were we talking about? Well, of course, the Flash. When we zoom back to the Silver Age of comics, we find an issue when one of the Flash's arch enemies, Gorilla Grodd, comes up with a plan to stop the speedster from running, and it's simple but effective. He makes him get so fat that he can't use his powers powers anymore. Grodd zaps the Flash with a ray that makes him retain water without him knowing. This made him bulk up until he literally weighed a ton. It would be pretty embarrassing to go from the fastest man alive to the star of my 600-pound life. Coming in number 5, we have Wolverine gets a girl's touch. Known for being one of the coolest characters in the Marvel Universe, it must have hurt to have his body tossed through building after building from one shot from a 12-year-old girl. In issue 12 of The Runaways, Wolverine is hot on the tail of Cloak. He eventually tracks down Cloak, and lo and behold, he's being protected by Molly Hayes, aka Princess Powerful. He tries to negotiate, but things turn violent pretty quickly. Downside for Logan is that Molly is probably one of the strongest mutants ever, and with one touch he's fired out of there like a snot rocket in the shower. Getting beat up by a girl must have not been the easiest emotional scar to get rid of. Coming in number 4, we have the Yellow Room. Lanterns are very particular about colors. Some are good, some are bad, and there's a spectrum, blah 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 blah. While in All-Star Batman and Robin, we see Hal Jordan get pranked, triggered, and beat up by his least favorite color, yellow. Batman is going out of his way to mess with Hal Jordan, decides to explore his artistic side and paint a room yellow. That's quite the statement. This of course sets Hal off when he walks in, but I don't think he was ready for what was about to happen next. A young Robin slips in and manages to pickpocket Hal's ring right off his finger, and then the teenager whoops his ass. Losing your ring, getting humiliated in a yellow room, and getting KO'd by a teenager, that is a rough one. Coming in at number 3, we have Superman is trusting and dumb. Not how you would think to describe the Man of Steel, but when you hear how Lex Luthor was able to trick him, you'll be on my side. There was a comic where Superman is approached by a tailor, a guy who seemed to be a kind fellow who just wanted to do a good deed for the man who keeps the city safe. You can tell that this is an older comic. When was the last time a tailor approached you randomly and offered to make you a suit? Well, this mystery man offers to give the Man of Steel a brand new suit that will freshen up his image. Superman thinks this is amazing and accepts. The tailor makes him this suit, and without questioning anything, he puts it on. I think this might have been a case of superhero privilege. You think that you should be getting gifts from strangers at any time of the day. Well, it turns out this generous tailor was actually Lex Luthor in disguise. You think the world's greatest hero would be on the watch for the one person who's trying to kill him 24/7, but I guess he let this one slip. Oh, and there's more. Lex Luthor planted a trap in the suit. He sewed a lead-covered clump of kryptonite into the suit, which Superman never noticed. He didn't take the half second to look at the suit with his X-ray vision. Nope, there's literally a bomb in his clothes that will expose him to his weakness at the worst moment, and it was given to him in person by his arch-enemy. Lex Luthor would have had to put Superman through a whole fitting process, and he still didn't pick up on it. Coming in at number 2, we have Tin Can Iron Man. As time goes on, we have seen heroes and villains become more intricate. The way that they fight, how they can be beaten, how they use their powers. For the most part, all of these things have become more exciting. But when some heroes were originally crafted, they didn't have such interesting pieces to them. For this slip up, let's head all the way back to Avengers number 2. In this issue, the team of Earth's mightiest heroes has an enemy they never thought they would have to face, themselves. Well, kinda. See, they take on Space Phantom. This is a villain who can copy any form exactly. There's literally nothing off about his imitations, and this was his plan to beat the Avengers by turning them on each other. This was Civil War before Civil War. At first the Avengers are fooled, but then they learn his tricks, and while the Space Phantom is a perfect imitation of Iron Man, Thor is able to stop him by making it rain. And not in the cool way, he didn't throw a stack of cash in his face. Literally, rain comes down and it rusts the perfect imitation of Iron Man so he can't move. I know some of you at home are going to complain because it was Space Phantom that was beaten and not Iron Man, but it was a perfect imitation of Iron Man, meaning that Iron Man could have also be beaten by rust, which is one of the most embarrassing things that Iron Man could have learned about himself. And coming into the number 1 spot, we have the Justice League losing to Killer Frost. There's no shortage of villains that have ice powers. When it comes to Killer Frost, she's okay. She's never really had a moment to shine. She isn't really a villain that any S-tier hero would even bother with. She would be happy to see Elastic Man show up to fight her. But there was one time when her and the Suicide Squad were taking on the Boy in Blue, and Enchantress was able to smash Superman so hard he was laying on the ground immobilized. Soup has always had trouble with magic users. Well, Killer Frost was there and saw this as a golden opportunity. She used her powers to suck Superman's energy dry, draining him of his life force and his powers. She then flew off and took out the entire Justice Justice League. Now, while it being hard for anyone from the league to take down someone that powerful, the fact that they let someone like Killer Frost get the drop on them, that is pretty embarrassing. This is one of the biggest upsets in comic book history.
Bullseye and Deadpool. These guys are just perfect for each other. In Daniel Way's Deadpool, we got to see these guys duke it out multiple times as Norman Osborn has hired Bullseye to take out Deadpool, but it's not the quick and easy job he's hoping it'll be. Bullseye is operating as part of Norman's Dark Avengers, playing the part of Hawkeye, so he's got a pretty neat Hawkeye-inspired costume. These guys have some great showdowns, including the first one that ends with Deadpool taking an arrow straight to the head. Somehow these guys just can't get enough of each other though, and end up at each other's throats again real soon. In a super epic moment later in the story, Bullseye launches a missile at Deadpool, who happens to be driving a huge ass truck at the time. He Tokyo drifts the truck, whipping it sideways, and narrowly misses the rocket, which goes streaming right through the cockpit of the truck. It's a super awesome moment, and these guys have a nice laugh about it afterwards. This duo obviously has a pretty good time trying to kill each other, and that could be the reason that they never actually get the job done. Bullseye winds up having to pay Deadpool off in the end, which is pretty embarrassing when your whole thing is that you're a hitman who never misses. Hey guys, don't forget to take a second to hit that like button, it really helps us out here at Top 10 Nerd. Number 9, Thanos Arrested. Oh man, this one is great. In this issue of Spidey Super Stories, number 39, there's a story called Dog Day Afternoon, where we see Spidey and Cat team up to take on Thanos. The story opens with Thanos buzzing around in his Thanos copter, and then he's all like, whoops, drop the old Infinity Cube, while he's battling with Cat. The two part ways, each hoping to find the cube first, but instead some kid finds it, and it eventually winds up back in Thanos' hands. This leads to a spectacular showdown, chock full of hilarious puns. Seriously, these guys do not let up with the cat and dog puns in this story. Thanos winds up using the cube a second time, causing an earthquake, and the earthquake makes him drop the cube again with a big oops, and this kid from earlier picks it up and uses the cube to subdue Thanos, tying him up in the grass. In the end, Thanos is arrested by the NYPD for his crimes, and it's pretty embarrassing. In fact, the entire story kind of makes Thanos look like an idiot, but it's pretty funny and definitely worth checking out. Number 8, Loki vs. Hulk. This epic moment from Joss Whedon's astonishing X-Men was honored in a glorious way in the first Avengers movie. After leading his alien army into New York and promptly losing to the Avengers, Loki is scheming for a way to change the tide and possibly get ahead when the Hulk shows up. Loki goes on a bit of a tirade about his power and majesty, but the Hulk is not amused. What happens next is a hilarious moment I'm sure you all remember, with Hulk grabbing the puny god and whacking him against the floor and walls with the gusto of a middle-aged man with a Terry's chocolate orange. Loki finds himself quickly buried in rubble and serves as a great reminder that if you're not prepared to take on the Hulk, you probably shouldn't even bring your evil empire to Earth. Number 7, Sabretooth and Wolverine. These two guys have a lengthy history of kicking the crap out of each other, and their origins are even wrapped together, so it kind of seems like they're destined to go toe-to-toe for centuries. Sabretooth is a bit obsessive about Wolverine, seeking him out every year on his birthday and making his life a living hell. Given that they both have a crazy powerful healing factor, you would think that they'd just fight forever like Joker and Batman, but that's before Wolverine finds a sword that can nullify healing factor. He uses it to take out Sabretooth in seconds, slicing clean through his neck and sending his head flying off like a dodgeball. It's a super badass moment, and totally awesome to finally see Sabretooth get what's been coming to him. It's a comic book death though, so before you know it, Sabretooth is getting brought back to life, being brought back from hell by a cult of magic ninjas. That's just the way it goes. Number 6, Ord vs. Colossus. So Colossus technically died in 2001, but it was a comic book death and you know how those go. In 2004, Joss Whedon's run on Astonishing X-Men gave Colossus an epic return as he goes up against the supervillain Ord in issue number 5. Ord is an alien super warrior and a pretty serious dude. He once took on the X-Men by himself before Colossus had joined the team. These two have a bit of a history as Ord experimented on Colossus's body against his will to help create the mutant cure. Experimenting on somebody usually leaves them foaming at the mouth, raging for revenge, and Colossus was definitely ready for some vengeance. Ord asks him, "Do you think you can stand against me because you're made of steel?" To which Colossus responds, "Not steel, rage! I'm made of rage!" And he just totally lays the beat down, even delivering a signature double hammer fist, Hulk style. Number 5. Harley Quinn tragedy. Working with the Joker has got to be taxing mentally, probably even physically demanding, but it's mostly the going insane that you would have to watch out for. Harley Quinn is a great example of this, and her dynamic relationship with Joker has unfolded into all kinds of different directions over the years. During the death of the family story, Joker does a whole bunch of super messed up stuff, including walking around wearing his own face that was cut off earlier, and tricking the entire Bat family into thinking he's cut off everyone's faces. If that wasn't bad enough, at one point, Harley winds up at Joker's mercy after he fails to kill her by dumping her in a vat full of chemicals. She wakes up chained to the wall, surrounded by corpses, and Joker drops a bombshell. She is not the first Harley Quinn, and she won't be the last. It's like the ultimate confirmation of her fears that Joker doesn't love her, and he's just using her as a disposable sidekick. It's an epic moment that really highlights the depths of Joker's insanity, and totally a tragic moment for Harley. If you haven't read Death of the Family, I definitely recommend it, although it's a bit on the gruesome side. The artwork is incredible, and there's some really crazy moments. Number 4. Lobo gets decapitated. Harley Quinn is an incredibly popular character, and as such, has some super epic moments and is a great provider of fan service. She knows how to deliver. In the Injustice comic, she actually ends up killing Lobo after getting juiced up by a pill that gives you super strength. Where can I get a prescription for those anyway? Asking for a friend. So Harley sort of teams up with Green Arrow and Black Canary, and the three of them wind up being followed back to Arrow Cave by Lobo. Lobo gets shot in both of his eyes by Green Arrow, and then Canary follows this up with her signature Canary cry. At this point, Harley leaps on top of the main man and tears his head clean off. Lobo is a super powerful dude, so to see him get done dirty like this is a surprise to be sure, but a welcome one. This event is highlighted by the fact that Harley and Lobo actually once had a short romance, but it definitely was not meant to last. Number 3. Composite Superman. This next one comes from way back in the 1960s, in an issue of World's Finest Comics, number 142, in which Batman and Superman go up against Composite Superman. Also known as Joe Meach, Composite Supes is a total failure in life, and he just wants to be somebody and be remembered. He somehow ends up working as the caretaker in the Superman Museum, and one day, a bolt of lightning strikes some of the superpowered artifacts and gives him the powers of all the members of the Legion of Superheroes. He makes himself a costume that's a mix of Batman and Superman styles, literally just like split down the middle like Two-Face, and he even ends up learning their secret identities. It's a crazy storyline, made even crazier by the ending. Composite Superman is totally wiping the floor with Batman and Superman. They don't have a chance, but his memories start to fade away and disappear, and he risks just forgetting everything that he's ever done. In a last-ditch effort, he tries to write some stuff down before he passes out, but just doesn't make it. It's all the more embarrassing as poor Jason Meach just wanted to become somebody, and now not even he will remember that he once had awesome superpowers. Number 2. Lex Luthor Cries. This one comes from the final issue of Grant Morrison's All-Star Superman, published in 2006. In the final issue, it seems like Lex might be victorious in the end. He's taken a special concoction that gives him the powers of Superman for 24 hours, and he uses this time to try to take over the entire planet. However, things get really crazy when Clark Kent reveals himself to be Superman and fires a gravity gun at Luthor. Things start getting emotional, and Lex is in this cloud and has kind of an epiphany about the pettiness of his hatred for Superman. Not only does he cry like he just saw the end of Infinity War, but his special concoction wears off too and he loses his powers. Lex starts complaining about how he had a vision and he could have saved the world, but Superman just lays the smackdown on him and says, "You could have saved the world years ago if it mattered to you, Luthor." It's totally awesome. Number 1. Dr. Doom vs. Squirrel Girl. This one is likely one of the most infamous supervillain defeats in Marvel history. The notoriously nefarious Dr. Doom has some seriously epic evil plans, and despite Iron Man's best efforts, he winds up on top, and Iron Man is in a pretty tough spot. Luckily for him, our native nutcracker from the Great Lakes Avengers, Squirrel Girl, shows up and drives Doom to the brink of madness with the help of her furry friends. Thousands of squirrels overwhelm Dr. Doom's ship, chewing on the wires and distracting Doom himself, while Squirrel Girl helps Iron Man to escape and confront Doom. Squirrel Girl has actually taken on some crazy characters in her past, like Wolverine and Deadpool, and even Thanos. However, this defeat of Dr. Doom at her hands and the hands of 1,000 tiny little squirrel hands definitely takes the cake as one of the most embarrassing supervillain defeats ever.